Hello, hello, fiends, and welcome to another horrific edition of Casey's Creepy Creations. Tonight we have a truly nauseating little nugget that I wrote and narrated, which I like to call Cruising Beyond the Veil. As always, we caution that the above video is not suitable for children, and if you suffer from a weak heart, please watch at your own risk. Cruising Beyond the Veil. The camera pans through the endless void of space, silent and infinite. Suddenly, emerging from the darkness is a colossal starship drifting alone, forgotten and lifeless. Dust coats its outer shell, its once bright lights now dull and flickering. Once celebrated as a marvel of human ingenuity, this vessel has languished in solitude for decades. But underneath its dormant exterior sleeps something far more sinister, a secret that refuses to stay buried. As the eerie score builds, we hear whispers echoing faintly, growing louder. Fragments of suppressed anguish, fragments of fury. Something or someone never left this ship, and the starship's final voyage will awaken horrors that no soul aboard could ever anticipate. Decades before, the starship was bustling with life. Engineers, officers, and their families lived and worked within its walls, their lives intertwined as they carved humanity's destiny among the stars. Amid this setting, three lives collide: a headstrong engineer in love with his stunning fiancée, and a quiet third figure, a friend, perhaps too close, harboring his own feelings for the bride-to-be. The scenes shift between moments of joy and tension. Smiles exchanged over communal dinners grow strained as jealousy simmers. The groom becomes suspicious. A stolen glance here, a whispered conversation there. He confronts his fiancée, but she denies any wrongdoing. Still, distrust consumes him. The breaking point comes one fateful night in the dimly lit maintenance bay of the ship. The groom's suspicions boil over into rage as he confronts his rival. Heated words escalate to shouts before an impulsive, fatal act, a makeshift tool turned weapon, a single moment of anger immutable and irreversible. The rival falls, his lifeblood staining the sterile floors. Eyes wild with shock, the killer hides the body, fabricating an excuse for his disappearance. Guilt eats at him, but to the bride, he presents a facade of composure. Together, they leave the ship, hoping the skeletons of their past are buried forever. The starship's corridors grow silent in their absence, but its walls remember. Its shadows grow long and alive with unrest. Years have passed. Beneath the facade of a successful life, the killer has lived with a gnawing weight on his soul. His wife, unaware of the truth, believes he's the portrait of stability. When news arrives that the famed starship is slated for its final farewell voyage before being decommissioned, he insists they join the gathering. Nostalgia, he claims. Closure, perhaps. But deep down, his real motive is darker. A desperate attempt to confront the echoes of guilt and silence them for good. The couple boards the now decrepit ship, its once vibrant halls faded and cold. Other passengers chatter excitedly, but for the killer, the air feels heavier with every step. His eyes dart around as if daring shadows to spring to life. Meanwhile, his bride feels the pang of bittersweet memories, unknowingly stepping back into the setting of her husband's unforgivable betrayal. The engines hum faintly, rekindled for this symbolic journey, but the starship feels alive in more ways than one. Its gut-wrenching silence is more than neglect. It's as though the ship itself has waited for something, or someone. The eerie incidents begin almost immediately. As the ship begins its slow orbit around an empty star system, whispered voices emerge from the radio static. Shadows flicker in corners, darting just out of sight. The killer tries to dismiss them as tricks of the mind, the result of being too wrapped up in his own guilt. But as the hours stretch on, the disturbances refuse to relent. Late one night, while exploring the corridors alone, the killer feels a chill run down his spine. The air grows thick. Movement stirs at the end of the hallway. He turns, but no one is there. Still, he feels it. The prickle of being watched, the phantom sensation of breath on the back of his neck. By the second evening, the hauntings grow bolder. Lights flicker on and off wildly. Equipment malfunctions without explanation. His wife notices these occurrences too, but tries to rationalize them. The phantom finally reveals itself. The killer awakes to find his wife asleep, the room's temperature freezing despite functional climate controls. The hair on his arms rises as he sees faint movement reflected in the glossy window across from his bed. At first he assumes it's his mind playing tricks on him. Then he sees it, a figure, pale and misshapen, twisted by years of anger and pain, standing at the far end of the room. He stumbles backward, heart pounding. No, you can't be here, he mutters. The ghost doesn't speak, but advances, its hollow eyes boring into him. Sudden flashes of the past overwhelm the killer's mind. He's forced to relive the murder again, only this time the victim doesn't just fall. He stares back, mouthing a single word. Why? Fearing his own unraveling, the killer confesses fragments of the truth to his wife in a heated confrontation. She's horrified, unbelieving at first, but even as her disillusionment overwhelms her, she begins to piece together the last threads of her husband's guilt. As the hauntings intensify, the starship itself seems to aid its phantom resident. Doors seal them into isolated sections. Thin walls seem to amplify distant, inhuman screams. They are both trapped with no way out. The wife begins experiencing her own encounters with the ghost. While initially spared its malevolent aggression, it soon tests her resolve by whispering bitter truths in her ear, questioning her complicity in her husband's actions. Was her silence in the past a choice, even if she hadn't known the full story? The ship malfunctions around them, engine rooms collapse into darkness, life support systems barely hold. It's clear they're not meant to survive. The walls are closing in, both physically and metaphorically, as the ghost manifests with more power than ever.
The once proud killer is reduced to a shadow of himself, driven mad by the relentless apparitions. He shouts apologies into the void, begging the dead man for forgiveness. Yet the ghost remains unremitting in its pursuit, exacting psychological and physical torment on its target.
Meanwhile, the wife becomes torn between saving herself and confronting the broken man she thought she knew. Guilt, anger, and grief churn within her, threatening to drive her to her own breaking point. Deep within the heart of the starship's central deck, where it all began, the ultimate confrontation unfolds. The killer, his wife, and the ghost collide in a breathtaking cacophony of emotion and terror. The ghost gives no quarter. It seeks justice, not apologies. Every revelation from the past drips into the present like a slow poison. The killer, incapable of repentance, succumbs to the weight of his sins. The moment his soul shatters, the ghost takes him, vanishing into the swirling chaos of shadows. The wife watches in stunned silence, tears streaming as she remains rooted in horror. Trembling, she whispers her own apology, not to the ghost, but to herself, for having ignored the warning signs for all these years. The wife staggers off the ship in the final moments before it is left abandoned forever, adrift in the emptiness of space. As she boards the rescue shuttle, the camera lingers on the starship, its lights extinguishing one by one until no glow remains. But just before the screen turns black, the faint shadow of a figure, still watching, still waiting, appears in one of the starship's windows. The legacy of betrayal and revenge lives on, trapped forever in the cold void. Haunting music crescendos as the starship disappears into darkness, leaving viewers uncertain whether the horrors within ever truly died. Well, boils and ghouls, we've come to the end of yet another terrifying tale. If you've liked what you've seen, please feel free to drop us a like, a comment, or maybe even a subscription. They may seem like little things to you, but they mean a lot to us here at the dungeon. Thanks, and unpleasant dreams until we meet again.